film that came out a couple of years ago that I wanted to watch but didn't get around to it until very recently. We just put this on a couple of nights ago to kind of kick off the Halloween season. I planned on doing an entry for it for this Halloween year, and I figured I'd do it now. I was actually very surprised. It was kind of interesting to see that, as I returned to it and you kind of remember all of the sort of publicity, I guess, and all of the marketing that was going on for it. I swear I thought this was way more connected to Jordan Peele than it actually was. And truthfully, it's really not. It's not connected to anything that Jordan Peele's done. Jordan Peele actually hasn't done anything with this film. It's just kind of come out along the same time as a lot of other Jordan Peele films of sort of the same sort of, I guess, plot points and plot devices in some way. But it is unique. Now, originally, when you start watching the film, you get the feeling like it might be a time traveling, ancestors type film. These ancestors of, slave owners have found the ancestors of a slave that their ancestors had, and it could be somehow connected that way. So it's not necessarily the case. Now, I appreciate what they did with the film, and I'm going to get into it, but I also do understand as well why it's not very critically received. It is definitely worth the critical responses it's gotten, because it could have been sort of done a bit better, especially for a film that I believe was released in theaters and, also pushed to the extent that it was. What was it? They really pushed something about Jordan Peele. I think it was just about that they was by the same production company that did Get Out and Us, which again, this is 2 years after Us, which Jordan Peele is getting on his stride around this time. So here's Antebellum. It comes out. It's trying to sell the same story, trying to appeal to the same crowd, appeal to the same moniker that these other films that it's using as part of its marketing tool and to express itself to its viewership. And then you start watching it and you get, the first section of the film and you go, okay, I'm understanding where this is going. It's going to be, of course, it's going to be something about, slavery and black hardship. And all right, let's see where it goes. Let's see what this is going to do with it. And then it jumps to modern day times. And this is where it sort of loses you, because there's a huge issue that I have where there's a lack of, I don't want to say realism, but there's a lack of understanding when it comes to how you want to portray a certain perspective, and you overwrite what your over biased opinion is on that perspective. So there's a scene where they talk about this argument that the main character has with another news anchor. Now here's the thing. There are moments where people say really dumb, racist, harmful shit on the news, but they are pretty much always overshadowed by other people talking over them, and they are usually not the actual people that are part of that news program. It's usually another guest. So it'll be like the anchor of a show, this one guest who has a very racist point of view, and then another guest who is like the person who this other guy is racist against. And then he'll say something that's way out of line. The anchor will come in and say, listen, you can't talk like that. That is ridiculous. And then the other person will become sort of, express that they feel disrespected. They will put the person in their place. And then there's a lack of, in this scene that they show in the movie, there is a lack of sort of an understanding of how you can portray that to an extent that a person watching the film would buy it. Like, I've seen plenty of stuff where this is what it's trying to portray, and this film just did not capture that. And it's not even just that. I'm just using that as an example. There are other points where there is just a lack of, it's like poor acting. It's almost B-level or C-level rated acting for just the fucking future parts, or what is portrayed as the future parts at first. After you go from what is considered to be, I'm guessing, 1800s, not concentration camp, 1800s, cotton field slave camp, you go into modern day, and it's just this overbearing feeling that everything seems rote. Everything feels like it's being said off of a script. And there's another scene where she has an interview on a Zoom call, like a Teams meeting with the laptop. And there's just these unnatural pauses while they're speaking, and there's unnatural dialogue that they share between each other, and just the way the scene plays out, it just doesn't feel. And I know I might say the word realist. It doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem realistic. And I might say that, and I know we're talking about a movie that's based on fiction and it's not a real story. But you're still meant to buy what's happening in the movie. You're not meant to sit there and see that, yes, these are people acting. Like, don't play me off to be stupid when I say that there's a lack of realism in it. You are still meant to be acting. You are still meant to be able to portray the role you're playing as if it was really happening. That's the whole point of acting. That's the whole point of movies. And for some reason, when it goes from the 1800s to 2020, it loses that sort of connection it makes with, I guess, the script or maybe the characters. And so for about 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes, however long it spends in 2020, in the time frame of the city environment it takes place in, it loses you. But then it brings you back because you learn it's not time traveling ancestor stuff. It's actually way more fucked up than that. And that's where the movie really, really won me over. So now, it had me interested in the first act. Then the second act had me really upset because I really didn't like the acting. I didn't like the portrayal of the characters. I just didn't like how anything was going. Then by the third act, when the twist rolls in, and the twist is, it isn't about ancestor stuff and time travel BS. Jesus Christ. It's about this secret society that is kidnapping black people to reenact slave plantation camps in the South. As if it was almost like World War II reenactments, like they do at Gettysburg, but to the extent that they're kidnapping them, forcing them to be slaves, and they're actually murdering them and abusing them and hitting them with hot coals, and they're using actual firearms, and they're raping them, and it's like a Civil War reenactment, but it's real fucking people in 2020 that they're just kidnapping and forcing into this game that they're playing, sort of. It's when you realize that's what's fucking happening, and there's this crazy scene when they're all out in the field, and they all know that there's 15 guys all standing around them. They all have guns, and there's a plane that flies over, and they all look up, and it's like, holy shit. It's the third moment. Because there's a moment where one of the generals answers a cell phone, and I'm like, is this a time travel movie? Because I'm like, how does this dude have a cell phone on a horse? So he answers the cell phone, and then it rolls back over into the next scene where some lady, one of the slaves winds up killing herself. And then you see a tattoo on her foot. And I'm like, tattoo on her foot? No tattoos back then. Tattoos, you weren't a slave with a tattoo, especially of a fucking butterfly. And then the plane, and I'm like, holy shit, they're fucking kidnapping them. This is a fucking... And then my wife pointed it out. She's like, yeah, this is like... They're like fucking Civil War reenacting fucking slavery. And I was like, holy shit, you're right. And maybe if the first two acts were done with a little bit more, like, strength, if they were just molded to be a little bit more better, maybe the appreciation of that twist would have hit harder with a lot of people. Because, again, when you research this movie, it's not received well, and it's very upsetting because, and again, like I said, I understand, the second act is very fucking bad. The second act, all of the acting in it is really fucking horrible. It's very much B-level acting. It's all really bad in the middle 30, 40 minutes of the film. The beginning is just a precursor, and then the twist is really what grabs you and makes all of it sort of worth it. But you gotta be willing to get to there, and if you're willing to get to there, the bittersweet ending is so worth it. It's just, it gives you that, like, feeling like you get when you finish watching, like, Hostel, or I Spit on Your Grave, or The Last House on the Left, or even just Get Out. Like, any of these films where you get that bittersweet revenge where the good guys win, it just feels really good. And it sucks that this didn't get enough of the recognition it needed or deserved, but it is understandable with how really bad the acting does get in the crucial part of the film where it's still doing character development. Like, how are we supposed to take it seriously when you have a lot of really poor exchanges, a really lot of unnecessary character arcs and character... There's this one dinner scene where, like, she takes out, like, the best friend and the other friend who's also an author. Like, the main character's an author, and then she has a friend who's an author, and they, like, speak about, like, female and racial disparities in society. And then they have the best friend, so they're all out to dinner, and there's a guy who's at, like, the same restaurant, and he buys them a drink, and then he comes over, and he's, like, trying to, like, flirt with her. And then she goes on this rant of, like, how you shouldn't buy me a drink, or if you do, you have to read the table because you brought me, like, a vodka cranberry, and we're drinking wine. We're wine girls, but here's my number anyway. Like, it's such a fucking dumb scene that it really is understandable that if you're watching up to that point, yeah, you can easily be a little fed up with that film up to that point. So I understand where if you might have stopped it at that point, you really didn't understand what was happening, or you didn't even care to watch after that, perfectly understandable. But really, that twist is what saved the movie for me, and everything that happens after that twist, everything makes sense beforehand. Even with all of the bad acting that happens beforehand, it all makes sense. All of the bad plot points that happen beforehand, it all is just worth it to get up to that point. And I guess you can kind of look at it like, I remember how a lot of people explained Game of Thrones to me. And I remember them saying, like, oh yeah, just wait till you get to, like, season 3. It gets really good. So I'm like, so I have to watch 2 seasons of really bad television to get to one season of good television? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I get that when I say the twist is worth it, I'm trying to tell you to watch an hour worth of a bad movie to watch 40 minutes of the rest of the film, which is really good. But it is worth it. Like, it is a good film. And maybe it's not even all that way a horror film, but it is still labeled in the horror/thriller sort of genre, and it is kind of right up there with any of the other Jordan Peele films, even though it's not really connected to Jordan Peele at all, except being by, like, the same company who produced all of his films, and that's how they marketed it, which, you know, however they want to market it is however they want to market it, but it is definitely something that could have been done a little bit better, at least the first half. But that twist, holy shit. It's just one of those things that happen in writing. When you see something that happens in writing, and again, as a writer, I do appreciate that. When you see a good sort of arc that you never thought that was sort of possible, or you never really imagined yourself, and you were like, holy shit, that makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. Why not have it be the ridiculous twist? Isn't time travel. It isn't ancestors that are following the bloodline or whatever. It's even simpler. But even that simple thing is so twisted, it makes sense and it makes for good storytelling. And maybe I'm just a little naive and maybe I just didn't expect the twist. And maybe there's a lot of people that did expect it or did catch it from the very beginning. I really didn't. I went into this very much a open-minded and kind of not expecting much. And I guess that's probably why I looked at the middle of the film and thought, yeah, not my cup of tea, not something I was really excited about once the middle of the film. Like I paused it at least 3 or 4 times while we were watching it in mid film and just ripped into it right in the middle. And then once the twist rolled around, we didn't pause it again and we watched it all the way through and I was just jaw on the floor. And I was so happy with how they kind of rounded out this really bad storytelling they did in the middle with how good they decided to kind of wrap that story up in this nice little bow. It's kind of like opening up a Ferrero Rocher, and it's like instead of there being that yummy like the crispy stuff that's like on the chocolate coating shell, like that's not there for some reason. Like they fucked up on the manufacturing, and you just so happen to open up the one that doesn't have that, and you're just like, oh well, fuck, there's no crunchy stuff, but the chocolate shell is still there, and you bite into it, and all the stuff in the center, still good. All the stuff, it's all good. You get to the ending of it, and it's still good, but you get disappointed because they fucked it up at the beginning. You opened up, and they fucked up. So I get it. It's not that good at the beginning. It's definitely worth. I mean, I don't know. I think Rotten Tomatoes has it at like 30%, and that's a pretty bad rating. I get it. I would definitely say maybe at least 50, maybe at least 50%. I would say it probably deserves, but it's interesting to see that it didn't get, I guess, better writing to make it worth more of the story it was telling, I guess, because it just needs tweaks in that center. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe somebody somewhere along the lines, maybe 10 years from now, wants to redo this concept and does it better. Like maybe another version of like, what's that Amazon show? Them. The show Them that Amazon did. Maybe a retelling of this story in like a Them sort of anthology universe. Maybe that where it kind of drags out the story a little bit more with like better acting and better writing for that midsection. Maybe that'll do it some justice. I don't know, but it really is a waste of a very good twist. But, you know, what are you going to do?